Good afternoon. It's a big day in New York sports today. I think we have almost like every team playing outside of the Giants and obviously some basketball teams because the season hasn't started yet. We have the Mets at 4, the Yankees at 7, the Jets at 8, the Rangers at 7, or is it
Rangers are at 7 and Islanders at 9.
Islanders at 9? This is my good friend Christian. Thank you for
What's going
being
on?
here today.
Of course, thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course. All right, let's jump right into it. So last night we saw a disaster class from the New York Giants. I think that's the best way to put it there. Everything that's went right in a lot of the games that we've seen Daniel Jones kind of play well. Daniel Jones didn't play well at all last night. I mean, there's no other way to put it. He had multiple opportunities. The defense was giving him stop after stop. They were giving him so many chances to drive down the field. Christian, what do you think about that?
Well, so obviously we were in attendance last night. It was pain to watch. There was that one interception. We just kind of chucked it up in the air. There were 4 Bengals under him where that ball was. It was I knew right when he threw it was going to be intercepted, and that might have been his worst throw all season.
Yeah, I think it was his worst throw all season. I mean, it definitely was his worst throw since week 1. I mean, he only turned the ball over once from week 2 to 5, and it was really just a Hail Mary interception. But when you talk about that, I don't know if I would rather take the sack there or just try and throw it out of bounds. Obviously, you don't want an intentional grounding call. I don't know. What do you think?
I can't remember what down it was, but if it was anything other than 4th down, I would have just taken the sack. You're in field goal range at that point. And I know Greg Joseph wasn't great, but it still would have been better than the interception.
Yeah, I mean, Greg Joseph missed the field goal last night. I know that was a huge play there, but obviously he's not like our starting kicker, like Graham Gano's our starting kicker. I like what we saw from Greg Joseph was like, all right, like he's a serviceable kicker, but it was kind of just another situation where Daniel Jones had all the opportunities. I think that Darius Slayton and Wan'Dale Robinson played well.
Yep.
What's his name? It's not Eric Gray, the other one.
Oh, Tyrone Tracy had a great game.
Yeah, he looked great. I mean, I would even somewhat debate using Tyrone Tracy a lot, even when Devin Singletary comes back, because obviously you don't have Devin Singletary for long, and you need a long-term solution there.
And Devin Singletary fumbles the ball a lot.
Yeah, he does fumble the ball a lot. I think he's fumbled it twice already this year in the
at least
2 or 3 games he's played.
And I do want to say, after we left, Greg Joseph missed another 45-yard kick.
Oh, did he actually?
It was like right after we left, 50 seconds left in the game.
Yeah. I mean, I've been talking to people, getting a bunch of different perspectives here to see what they might think about the Giants, and a lot of them are saying the Giants might miss Saquon, but they have a bunch of other weapons. I mean, to allocate $13 million, however much it was to get Saquon Barkley, I don't think it's worth it. What do you think there?
I don't. Tyrone Tracy seems very good. I mean, I've been high on him since the draft. I think he's going to be really good once he is the lead back. We've seen it without Singletary. He had 50 yards last night and a touchdown. He caught the ball 6 times last night. So clearly he can catch the ball. Singletary can't do that, really.
Yeah, no, Singletary can't really do that. And to have a dual threat running back, I mean, they tried it with Saquon Barkley last year, I remember, and Saquon wasn't really great at catching either. I think a dual threat running back is something that's growing a lot in the league. I've seen a bunch of running backs now be able to catch the ball and drive down the field. It's definitely another option there for teams to look out for.
And I do also want to point out, Tyrone Tracy was tied for the lead for the Giants in receiving yards. He had 57, as did Darius Slayton. So clearly Daniel Jones likes to throw to him.
Yeah, I mean, he's comfortable throwing to him. That's a big thing when you talk about quarterbacks. It's who they're comfortable throwing to. I talked last week about Aaron Rodgers and Lazard and how it seems like he only wants to throw to Lazard because that's who he's comfortable with. Comfortability is a huge thing there.
Yep.
Another thing I want to point out is Dexter Lawrence now leads the league in sacks. I mean, he's a nose tackle. That's what he is.
It's unbelievable. I cannot believe a nose tackle is leading the league in sacks right now. And it's not, I think he passed up Aiden Hutchinson, who unfortunately is not going to get any more sacks this year.
No. Maybe even the start of next year, he might not get any. That was a pretty brutal injury last night for Hutchinson. But yeah, I talked about the Giants defense a lot. Week 1, I think that's the only week the Giants defense played not great. I mean, the Giants defense definitely is a strength. They just need to find a way to get the offense going.
And with week 1, it was against the undefeated Vikings. So I don't really they have not, other than the Vikings, they have not given up more than 21 points in a game this season.
Yeah, that defense is spectacular. I hope they can find a way to get the offense going. I think if they had neighbors last night, it might have been a different story. I mean,
agree.
they definitely would have been able to break open a little bit more, and that's what they were looking for. They kept getting these smaller plays, but nothing like huge.
4 sacks. I mean, that's a lot. That's good. I think they still lead the league in sacks.
Yeah.
They should.
Yeah, they should definitely getting 4 more last night. I don't see a world where they don't.
No.
I think we're gonna move on to the Jets. The Jets obviously played tonight. I mentioned that in the opening. This is their first game with a new coach. How do you think this coach is gonna adjust?
I don't know. I feel like it all depends on Aaron Rodgers. He's old. I mean, he's gonna have to throw the ball. He's gonna have to he's also gonna have to get used to running the ball with Breece Hall. I feel like they haven't really done that much this year.
Yeah, outside of like one or two games, we haven't seen Breece Hall run much, and I touched on it last week too. The weapons that he has, he really has to take advantage of. I really want to see a big game from Garrett Wilson tonight. I want to see a big game from Breece Hall. I want to see a big game from these guys we saw last year play well with Zach Wilson, and I thought they were really going to take advantage of it.
And Garrett Wilson did have a good game this past week in London. Hopefully that continues.
Yeah. So you touched on how the new coach wants to run more. Aaron Rodgers says he's a proponent for it, but I'm not quite convinced there. I mean, Aaron Rodgers is a guy where I think he's a veteran presence now. He wants to run the game himself. So he might say he thinks one way. I don't think there's any sort of telling until we see how he plays tonight.
And I do believe they took away Nathaniel Hackett's play calling.
Yeah, they did. I saw that pop up on the screen while I was watching. I think Pat McAfee. They were talking about it.
And the thing with Nathaniel Hackett is the reason he's on the Jets is because of Aaron Rodgers. Like Aaron Rodgers wanted him there, and now he's not going to be calling the plays anymore.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. They've given Aaron Rodgers almost everything he's wanted. Like they gave him Allen Lazard, they gave him Hackett, and they gave him all this protection too this year. They kept talking up that O-line that this year it was going to be better. I mean, I haven't really seen it this year. It's up to Aaron Rodgers, bottom line, I think.
Absolutely. And I feel like he got a hit, I think it was last week, where he said he thought the same thing that happened last year happened again with his leg. And he said now that it happened and nothing really happened to his leg, he feels a lot more comfortable.
Yeah, I mean that's obviously always going to be a lingering thought. There is what happened last year can happen again. I mean, the guy's the oldest player in the league, maybe outside of a kicker or two. Definitely the oldest quarterback there. There's always that injury risk, and with a run heavy defense, obviously he's going to spend less time in the pocket there. He's going to get the ball out a little quicker. He's not going to have that same risk. I think it's definitely a positive there running it more.
Yeah, absolutely. And I believe whoever wins this game tonight will be the leader in the AFC East.
Yeah, that's obviously a huge thing there. That division's kind of been disappointing all around. The Dolphins were supposed to be up there and competing for the division, and now they're kind of just a non-factor. The Jets coming into the season were supposed to be up at the top. And I mean, now that the Bills have played poorly these past 2 weeks, they've kind of given them a chance to retake that lead.
Yeah, absolutely. Josh Allen has only thrown for over 200 yards twice this year.
Yeah. Josh Allen hasn't played great. I mean, the Bills were finding ways to win. I thought the Bills looked great the first 3 weeks. And then the last 2 weeks were just a completely different story there. I mean, you talk about it. It looked like Josh Allen couldn't get anything done in the first half last week. And then 2 weeks ago, I think was just a complete disaster as well.
Yeah, last week they only lost by 3, but it wasn't awful. I mean, Josh Allen only had 131 yards. James Cook rushed for 82, but I think he was also missing Khalil Shakir, which is crazy to say that he's the lead receiver there. But Khalil Shakir didn't play. Allen didn't really pass the ball much. And I believe he'll be back from injury this week. So hopefully Allen can get the passing game going.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about the Bills this year. I mean, they obviously lost their star receiver in Stephon Diggs. I mean, when I saw week 1, 2, and 3 was them spread the ball a lot and find these different people like Shakir. Having him back tonight, definitely a huge thing for them tonight.
Absolutely.
All right. Let's see. Who do you think's gonna score a TD tonight?
Brees Hall. I think he's due. He hasn't been running the ball much. I think tonight's his night.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely Brees Hall. I want to see Garrett Wilson score a touchdown this week. I definitely do. Alan Lazard's always a guy you got to
I
look
was
out
gonna
for.
say Alan Lazard.
Yeah, but I think I'm gonna go with Brees Hall as well. Who do you think's winning the game? Who do you think's taking it all?
Ooh, I think it's be close. I'm gonna go with the Bills, but I could see it going either way. I think it's a close game.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with the Bills as well. I think the Bills, they obviously have Shakir back this night. I think they've been the better team all year. It's gonna be an adjustment game, whether the Jets fans want to see that or not. They're not gonna have a new coach step in and him automatically be adjusted to the play calling there. It's so I just don't see the Jets winning tonight. I think it's gonna be the Bills.
I could see it being a close game though.
Yeah, definitely. I want to move on and talk about what happened in the ALDS for the Yankees first, and then we'll move on, talk about the Guardians versus Tigers. But when you talk about the Yankees, everyone was like they now have a clear path to the World Series, and when they dropped Game 2, it got everyone in a frenzy. Listen, it was one game. They played poorly one game. I think they played tremendously outside of that. Obviously, I'd like to see the bats going a little bit more, but what do you think about that?
I'm not gonna lie, I got a little worried after Game 2, but I saw them pick it up. It still was a little scary. I feel like the games might have been a little too close, but I have hope for the bullpen. I think they're gonna get the bats going a little more. Hopefully, Aaron Judge picks it up. He had a double in Game 4. Hopefully, he continues that.
Yeah, Aaron Judge is definitely the big factor there. He's the star player. I mean, you see that in Los Angeles with Mookie Betts. Everyone was talking about him too. You need your star player to show up. He creates most of the runs for your team. He did it for almost all of the regular season, definitely for most of it, outside of maybe the month of August where he had a slow month. He was on that historic home run drought that we'd seen in his career. Another factor is Anthony Rizzo is possibly going to be on the roster.
They announced the roster this morning. Rizzo and Marcus Stroman are both on the roster.
Rizzo and Marcus Stroman. Who'd they take off?
I didn't really look at who they took off. I don't know.
I know they were mentioning taking Dominguez off.
He was still there. I made sure he was there.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, they might have taken Duke Ellis off. Not quite sure what the exact moves were there. But having Anthony Rizzo back, yes, Birdie and Cabrera filled in great. But that's what they were. They were fill-ins. Everyone was worried when Anthony Rizzo went down too, even though he shouldn't be the deciding factor if the Yankees make it to the World Series or win the World Series. Like, it's Anthony Rizzo, but his defense there is stellar. He makes great contact. He rarely strikes out. I mean, it's definitely great to have Anthony Rizzo back. I think that's going to boost the whole lineup a lot. What do you think about Anthony Rizzo returning?
I can see it going either way. He wasn't amazing when he came back the first time this season, but he wasn't bad. I think Cabrera and Birdie really held down that position. I could see Boone maybe giving one of them the nod today and see how it goes, and maybe just fit Rizzo in there with the three of them. I think Birdie's going to get the most, like the least amount of playing time there.
Yeah, I could definitely see them doing that, especially because they don't want to aggravate anything that's going on with Rizzo that might still be lingering. Maybe they use Rizzo as a pinch hitter later on. I don't know if they're going to start him. Obviously, the lineups aren't out yet. The game isn't until 7:30 tonight. We will see what goes on there. But when you talk about the ALCS, a huge story was the beef that went on after Game 2 with Maikel Garcia and Jazz Chisholm.
Yep.
What are your opinions on that little spat there?
I think Garcia was trying to hype his team up, but he didn't do it in the right way. I think he hyped the Yankees up a little more. He was trash talking the Yankees fans on Twitter, and I think we saw it all come to a head in Game 4 where the bench is cleared. And I don't know. It's just
I mean, it's definitely a guy there. He's trying to hype up his team. They just won a game. He's trying to take that momentum into the next few games, maybe even pull out the series there. I mean, Jazz Chisholm was kind of doing the same thing coming into the series. He was talking about how the Royals have no chance. Like, there's no way the Yankees don't win this series. He even talked about it after Game 2. He was just like, nah, like, we're winning this. Like, he He exuded so much confidence there. That's something I haven't seen in a Yankees player in a while.
Honestly, since CC.
Yeah,
It reminds me a lot of CC.
Yeah, definitely a little CC kind of energy going on there. But one thing that really bothered me was Michael Garcia saying we're not afraid. But by saying you're not afraid, you're kind of insinuating that in some way
You should be.
Yeah, like they're lingering in the back of your head. Like you're obviously gonna have a little bit of fright there. Let's see. The bullpen was outstanding for the Yankees.
Unbelievable.
Like absolutely unbelievable. I think they found like their three like main guys they're going to use being Canely, Holmes, and then Weaver. Obviously, Weaver's a guy where I love him in the closer role because he could come in the 8th inning and do a 2-inning save and be completely fine for the next game.
And he has emotion. I never really saw Clay Holmes show emotion. Weaver's always showing emotion.
Yeah, you talk about closers in this league. You kind of have to have like a psychopath type of energy. Like you have to feed off of it. He talks about blacking out a lot during games. I mean, whatever works. I mean, Weaver's been incredible since being moved to the closer role. I think he has like something like 50 strikeouts in like 25 innings. Like it's something crazy like that. Yeah, definitely a huge positive there. I want to see the starters do a little bit more. Garrett Cole obviously proved that game 1 wasn't a thing we have to be worried about, but Carlos Rodon tonight has to be really, really good.
I think he bodes well against the Guardians because they have a lot of lefties.
They do have a lot of lefties.
But they did wreck Screwball the other day.
Yeah.
It was a grand slam, but nonetheless, he's a lefty, so I would still be a little worried, but I think it might be a little better for Rodon.
Yeah, that's really what it came down to for the Guardians there was that grand slam by Lane Thomas. Obviously, without that, they don't win the game. Screwball had looked incredible. It obviously worries me that they were able to do that against the guy has that much prowess and is.
I believe he won the Triple Crown this year.
Yeah, he won the pitching Triple Crown this year. Like that's a little worrying. Like you have to be a little bit afraid there. But I want to talk about what the Tigers did. I mean, you can't downplay what the Tigers did because they made that miracle run to the playoffs. And I think what you told me earlier was you would have rather faced the Guardians. You think this is a more favorable matchup?
I think it's because the Yankees have seen them before. It's familiarity. It's the Tigers, other than the Mets, were the hottest team in baseball, and you never want to run into a hot team in the postseason. I think the Guardians might be a little. I don't want to say easier to face. I don't want to say anybody's easy to face in the playoffs, but it's a lot of familiarity there. Last time the Yankees were in the playoffs, they beat them, and I think they might be able to have their number. I'm pretty sure Garrett Cole pitches amazing against the Guardians.
Yeah, Garrett Cole pitched really well that game 4. He even had in 2022. He had even offered to come out of the bullpen game 5. We were at that game and we saw Garrett Cole warming up in the bullpen that game.
Yeah.
I think there's a little unfinished business there, and I think they're going to finish business that series, but we're going to touch on that a little bit later for that series in general. I think I want to move on to the Mets versus Phillies. That was obviously a huge series for the Mets because they took down a division rival there. They show no quit. That they're very hot. I mean, obviously, Christian touched on it. You don't want to face a hot team in the playoffs. You really don't. What were your opinions on the Mets Phillies series?
It was so fun to watch. I'm going to be honest. Like even if the Phillies got up 4-0, there was always that little thing in the back of your head, like the Mets are going to come back. Like even last night when they were down 6-0 to the Dodgers, I was texting our friend. I was like, they're going to come back. Like you never know what's going to happen with the Mets.
I've touched on it a lot. The thing that makes me mad about the Mets is their fans kind of abandoned them when they weren't doing well halfway through the season, and now they kind of jump back on. But I've talked to a lot of Mets fans, and they've said the job's not finished, and I really appreciate that energy because the job really is not finished until you win the World Series. What's your opinions on the Mets fans' attitude this season and how it's evolved?
So I don't know many Mets fans, honestly. Most of my friends are Yankees fans, but the ones that I have spoken to, the ones that I know at least, they stick with them through the season. Whether or not they're happy with the team is a different story. But once they started getting hot, you saw all these Mets fans coming out of everywhere. Like you didn't even know these people were Mets fans. Now all of a sudden they love the team.
Yeah, I mean, we went to the Mets game back in August, and the energy was it was something I hadn't seen in Citi
Mhm.
Field probably ever. Maybe since 2015. I did go to a game back in 2015. It was it was kind of a barn burner, that game. I remember it pretty vividly. Uh, Matt Harvey was pitching against the Nationals, and the Mets took that game. It was the game where they were supposed to trade Wilmer Flores, and Wilmer Flores walked off the game that
Right.
game. It's giving off similar energy to 2015, but Mets fans got to remember they didn't get the job finished that year, and this year they should have a little bit more of an expectation there.
Absolutely. I
Yeah.
think I do think that this team's going to stay hot, and we saw the Dodgers last night kind of scored 9 runs on them.
Yeah, that has to worry a little bit of Mets fans. I want to touch on the championship series just a little later, but yeah, that's a good thing to bring up there. We did see something that I think this is the first sign of worry Mets fans have had all postseason, maybe besides when the Phillies took that one game there.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was the only. This is like the first time where I'm seeing them be a little worried. One player I want to touch on in specifically is Francisco Lindor. I mean, as a Yankee fan, I saw him play for the Guardians, and the guy has the clutch gene. I mean, he made it to the World Series back in 2016. I think he's a huge playoff performer, and for the Mets to have someone like that, I wish the Yankees had someone like that. I think Stanton might be the closest thing we have to a guy that's like a bona fide playoff performer, but that's something the Dodgers are going to have to look out for is Francisco Lindor. What's your opinions on Francisco Lindor?
He's so good. I mean, he was if it weren't for Ohtani having his historic season, I think Lindor could definitely have won MVP. But another thing I think Mets fans should realize is that they have Jeff McNeil back. I don't know how he performs in the playoffs. I don't think he's had many opportunities, but he to me seems like one of those players that could flip a switch and be amazing.
Yeah, that's something I was talking about last week. Actually, was there's always that one player you have to think that might flip a switch. I talked about it maybe being Oswaldo Cabrera for the Yankees at first base, which obviously he didn't quite show that. He played great there. Like Birdie played great. Birdie hit the ball super hard. I mean, they both played not, I wouldn't say above our expectations, but they played a serviceable role there. But I haven't seen that person from the Yankees yet, someone that could flip the switch.
I think it's Glaber. Glaber's looked really good. I'm going to be honest, Verdugo's looked really good too, and especially in the field. He's had a lot of, I would say, inning-saving plays.
Yeah, I mean, that's one thing. That's one thing I touched on after game 1 was Verdugo made 2 plays I don't think Dominguez would have made, and they saved runs. They possibly saved rallies that Kansas City could have had. And I think it's the right decision to just keep Verdugo there in left field. As this kind of pertains to the Mets a little bit with McNeil, he would either be playing second base or an outfield position. I don't know.
I think they would have to put him in the outfield because Jose Iglesias has been their hottest hitter for the last second half of the season. He plays second. You're not going to take Lindor out of shortstop. Their infield is I believe it's Pete, Iglesias, Lindor, and Vientos.
Yeah,
you can't take that out.
Yeah, so you can't take anyone out there.
I believe someone along the lines of Tyrone Taylor has been playing in the outfield for them. I think Jeff McNeil could slide in there. I don't know how Taylor's been doing, but
yeah, I don't know. I feel like they kind of have a similar situation to the Yankees last year in the outfield, where they have kind of like one dead spot. I would be interested to see if maybe they think of playing McNeil, especially after they couldn't get anything done offensively. I talked with a Mets fan a few hours ago, and they said a huge issue they saw last night was the fact that they were swinging and missing a lot, being a little bit too aggressive. Jeff McNeil is a guy where he rarely strikes out. He makes contacts. He might be able to resolve that.
He did not start last night. They had Tyrone Taylor in center.
Oh, they did. Yeah.
And I also think last night you got to give a break to Kodai Senga. He's pitched 3 games this year.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of a thing where I also I think I touched on it last week as well, where Kodai Senga, I wouldn't even start him. I kind of use him out of the bullpen. He hasn't been stretched out this year. He's rarely pitched, and when you can use him, you have to only use him for a certain amount of innings. There is a cap there where you can use him for. I think probably the cap where you'd use him for is 4 or 5 innings. and then take him out, and then you have to use the whole bullpen anyway, and that bullpen is a little thin as it is.
Yeah, absolutely. And they got rid of Adam Ottavino out of the bullpen to bring in Jeff McNeil.
Oh, they did.
So
I mean,
he wasn't great this year, but
Yeah,
it's
no.
another arm.
yeah, that's the thing. When you construct a playoff roster, you have to leave some people off, and it's always going to be a tough decision whether you want to carry more pitchers or hitters. Last round, the Yankees, for example, went with more hitters. This series, I think they're going with more pitchers. I mean, they brought in Stroman and Rizzo onto the roster. Stroman's a guy they didn't carry because they said they didn't think they would need him. Now, I think when you stretch the series out to 7 games, the Mets kind of did the opposite there by taking out Avino out. You're going to need more pitching. It's a move that can play off, but it's pretty dangerous there.
I think he's going to come out of the bullpen. I don't see a world where he starts. Boone already said who's going to start games 1 through 4.
Yeah.
And I think once game 5 comes around, we're just going to start over again with Rodon.
Yeah, definitely there. I mean, obviously, you want your best 2 pitchers to pitch 2 games in a series, and then the other 2, you just want to pitch that one game, and hopefully pitch a serviceable game to the point where you could turn it over to that lights out bullpen there.
If a game 7 happens, who's starting that game? Do you think they flip? Because I would say because game 6 would be Cole if you stick to the rotation that they're in, which would mean that game 7 would be Luis Gil. Do you feel confident there?
No, I don't feel confident in Luis Gil in a game 7, but I do think that Garrett Cole would yet again offer to come out of the bullpen.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean the guy's got that bulldog energy where he's available at any given point, any given time. I mean that's the pitcher you want on your team. I think they would probably throw Luis Gil out there for like an inning or 2 and then see what you could get out of the bullpen. Unless Luis Gil's pitching lights out, then
we have to see how he does game 3.
Yeah, that's the thing there. You got to see how he does. I mean, he hasn't pitched a game yet this postseason.
And I'm once again hoping we don't have a game 7.
Yeah, no, definitely not. You never want to get to game 7 because game 7 is basically a wild card game where it could go either way. Like, I mean, if you're caught on an off day, if you're caught off guard, it's kind of just that's it. Tough luck. Like you're out now.
Yeah, I hope they finish it in 6 or 5.
Yeah, 5 or 6 would be ideal. I do see it going 6. I mean, Cleveland has a few good starters where they could definitely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Definitely take a game or 2 there. Talking about the Padres-Dodgers a little bit here. That series was electric. There was a lot of tension going on there. We saw Tatis jarring with the Dodgers a little bit. And I mean, it honestly hasn't ended since that series ended too. What do you think on that, Beef?
Well, there was also the thing with Profar where like the Dodgers fans started throwing stuff at him.
Yeah, I mean, you never want to see something like that, period. Like I love when fans show energy. I love when fans are rowdy and they show up. I mean, that's what it's all a part of being a fan. You have to show up. You have to bring the energy with you. I mean, I talk a lot about how the fans dictate the winning energy. But when you're throwing stuff at other players like that,
they threw a ball at him. They threw a baseball at him.
Yeah, I mean, like that's not only like a hazard, but it doesn't look good for the fan base in general. I mean, I saw a lot of Dodgers fans fighting Padres fans and even fighting themselves. Like,
yeah, I've seen that. Yeah.
But that series was incredible. I thought the Padres were going to pull it out. What do you think about that series?
I thought the Padres were going to pull it out. But then they didn't score for what 20 something innings.
Yeah, that's something I didn't know the Dodgers were really capable of. There was their bullpen. I didn't think their bullpen was that good, but their bullpen has been lights out. Not quite the level of the Yankees, but it's been great there.
Yeah, and unsung hero for the Padres was Kyle Higashioka.
Yeah, Kyle Higashioka hit 3 home runs. I think he's still the home run leader in the playoffs.
Is he? I wouldn't be shocked.
I know he has 3 there. Kyle Higashioka always showed flashes of hitting home runs here and there, and it seemed like he got hot right at the right time there for the Padres. Definitely something I like to see there.
Yeah. Tatis had 4, but Higashioka and Pete Alonso both had 3, so they're tied for second.
Yeah, I mean they're both out now, so
yeah. So who knows? But Tatis played amazing too.
Yeah, Tatis was that star player yet again, showing up for a team. That's the thing, but he didn't show up when it mattered. When you were about to close out the series, he didn't show up in game 4 or 5, and that was the difference there. I mean, no one showed up for the Padres in game 4 or 5.
I think Game 4, they had 4 hits.
Yeah.
And one of them was a Tatis double, but clearly didn't matter.
No. You got to get timely hits. You have to have your star players show up. You have to have everyone contribute. I mean, the playoffs is a different beast in general.
Yeah.
I think we saw that there. I mean, the Dodgers are in a similar situation to the Yankees here, where they have no excuses. Whether if they lose, I mean, that's like the world is ending there for the Dodgers. They have no excuses. Yes, you could say their starters got hurt. You could point to a lot of different factors there, but the Dodgers have one of the top payrolls in baseball. I mean, if you count that $70 million from Ohtani into their payroll, they definitely have the highest payroll there. They are in a win now mode. It's World Series or bust for them.
I mean, if you're the best team in the MLB record-wise, you have to win the World Series or bust. And you can't even blame it on their starting pitching getting hurt, because their pitching was hurt for almost half the season. And you still were able to get the most wins in the league. So you can't.
Right.
Yeah. It's not a valid argument, I feel like.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely this is something I want to touch on before we move on, is a potential World Series matchup. This is what the MLB wants to see. I think is a Yankees-Dodgers World Series. I think that would be
that's what the MLB wants. Yeah.
What would you want there?
If I'm being 100% honest here, I don't think the Yankees can beat either of them.
You don't think the Yankees can beat either of them?
I don't. I think they have a better chance of beating the Dodgers, but a Stadium Series World Series would be so fun.
You think so?
I think it would be fun. Either way, if the Yankees are in the World Series, I'm going to be stressed. So I might as well have a little fun while
right.
I mean, watching.
Here's my take on it: is I really don't want a Subway Series matchup in the World Series, because every game is going to seem like the most important game, and
which as a World Series game should, I feel like.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely should, but I'm going to be catching flack from Mets fans.
Oh yeah,
that they could have just barely pulled out a win, not played well at all, and just the Yankees make a few mistakes, and then they're going to hold that over my head. I think it's a lose-lose situation if the Yankees play the Mets, because the Mets are going to claim victory no matter what.
That's what Mets fans do.
Yeah.
And I do want to point out, even now, I've seen some Mets fans saying, oh, well, we beat you guys all season. Have you seen some of the lineups that they had?
Yeah, the Yankees were very hurt those series.
Jahmai Jones was leading off, and JD Davis was batting cleanup.
Yeah, like those guys aren't even on the team anymore. Like they beat a completely different team there. Like you can't hold that over our heads.
I was at one of those games. It wasn't fun. They lost 9-1 or something. It was awful. But that lineup was probably even worse.
Yeah. I mean, I point back to a lot of old Yankees lineups and how weak they were, even in 2022 in the ALCS when they played Houston, in the ALDS when they played Cleveland. Those lineups were weak. This is a completely different team.
Oh yeah, I think this team is worlds better than all these teams. Except I don't know, the 2017 team had something with them.
Yeah, the 2017 team had that energy.
But I think this team might rival it.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, they definitely do have a win or nothing type of attitude. Like Judge himself said that if they don't win, it's a bust. I mean, Judge got to show up to back that up, but that's a whole other thing.
And they want to bring Soto back, and I feel like a World Series might help with that.
Yeah, it definitely will help. It definitely will help the case. Soto is a winner. It's just in his blood. Like all he wants to do is win. I mean, he won a World Series the second year of his career. I mean, they definitely want to win the World Series, not only for their fan base that is hungry for one, but for the opportunity of bringing back Juan Soto there. Let's move sports a little bit before we jump back and talk about the championship series to possibly end the show. There, the Rangers had their first 2 games. You know a lot about hockey.
Yeah. They score a lot, and I think that giving up 6 goals to Utah isn't ideal, but they are looking like the best team in the league right now. So I'm not going to really hold it against Igor. But
yeah,
if you want $12 million, you got to be better than that.
Yeah, you definitely have to be better than that. And I think Igor has to be feeling some sort of pressure there. I mean, he's obviously I'm pretty sure he rejected an $11 million contract for 8 years. I mean, that would make him the highest paid goalie by a large margin there.
I think the highest paid is maybe 9,000 or 9 million.
Yeah, I think it is, and I think the Devils just handed that
I think they
contract
did.
out. Yeah.
But I don't think it was all his fault. I don't know if you know this,
No.
but Mika Zibanejad in a game where the Rangers scored 5 goals was -4.
He was -4. See, that's the thing with Mika Zibanejad. I feel like he's so hit or miss. Last year, he definitely didn't play close to any of the Rangers fans' expectations. Seems like that way again.
One thing that people are seeming to notice is that he's moving a lot slower. He's in his 14th season in the league. He's moving a lot slower. He was on the ice in overtime, and if you watch the clip, the goal was. Did you see the goal? The overtime goal?
No, I didn't.
He wrapped around the Utah player, wrapped around the net, looked like he was going to pass, and just kind of flipped it up right above Shesterkin, top shelf. And Mika looked lost. He just kept skating and left the net wide open for Keller to score.
Yeah, that's the thing. When you talk about goals being scored against your team, you can't just blame it on the goalie. Yes, I mean, he's the guy in the net, but you have defensive players for a reason. I mean, your forwards should be able to play defense as well. I mean, being a two-way player is definitely something you need from a guy that's paid as much as Mika Zibanejad is.
And he's on the top line.
Yeah.
And one thing I also want to point out is that he was -4 in this past game. And in a game where they got shut out, or they shut the Penguins out, and they scored 6 goals, he was only +1. He was only on the ice for one of those goals because his plus-minus for the season is -3.
Yeah, I mean, that you want to touch on the Penguins game a little bit right now?
Yeah,
Make
sure.
things a little bit more positive. I mean, they looked lights out that game. They had goals from Kreider twice. They had a goal from Lafreniere that game. I think, as well.
It was Kreider twice. I know Lafreniere scored. The new guy, Sam Carrick, scored. And Trocheck scored. And there was one other goal.
I think it was Hedl.
Was it Hedl? It might have been Hedl. Yeah, it was Hedl.
Yeah. So one thing I mentioned was we need to see a lot from a lot of different players. Like, we need to see the most we can get out of all of our players because of the cap constraints we have, because Trouba declined that trade. And we saw that game 1. I think we even saw that game 2. And I mean, that's very positive there when you think about it, especially since I think a huge negative on the Rangers last season was they didn't score much in the playoffs last year, and especially against the Panthers when they got eliminated that series. And now that they are scoring, I mean, it can catapult them a little bit forward, but we need to see the defense play better. I mean, that's been a huge issue. We need Trouba to show up.
Yep.
Trouba, yeah, he's got assists this year, but I need to see him play that defensive side. I mean, he is a defenseman. I need to see defense out of players.
Yeah, absolutely. And one defenseman that's been playing because Ryan Lindgren's out is Victor Mancini, and he's looked good. He started beef with Sidney Crosby in that first game because I believe Crosby fell onto Igor. And Mancini was right in there, and then they were both skating back to the bench, and Mancini had some words for him, kind of tapped him with a stick a little bit, and that's something we need. And Ryan Lindgren's usually that guy, and if the guy filling in for Lindgren is doing that, that's a good sign, especially because I believe Lindgren's on a 1-year contract.
Yeah, it's definitely a good thing there because I talked about, I don't know how much youth the Rangers have, and after this season, it's going to be a little bit of question marks to see how they're going to fill in these holes and to see the youth coming up and playing that well. Victor Mancini even got the goal taken away from him 2 days ago.
Yeah, in the Utah game, because there was I want to talk about that. That was one thing I really wanted to point out. If anybody watches hockey enough, you know that who Wes McCauley is. He's one of probably the most well-known referee in the league. And whenever he plays or whenever he referees a game, he makes the game about him. I've seen everybody on Twitter always calls it the Wes McCauley show because he does. The Rangers had a lot of penalties, at least 6, I want to say.
Yeah, it was a penalty every 5 minutes.
A goal was called off, the Mancini goal, because it was goalie interference when it really wasn't. The goalie went up to Rempe.
Yeah.
And then there was the penalty where I believe Cooley and someone on Utah was fighting for the puck. and keep calling him Arizona, the Utah goalie comes right out of the net. He was probably halfway to the blue line, and Cooley, as the Utah guy hits Cooley into the goalie, they both go flying, and Cooley gets the penalty. And Utah ended up scoring on that play.
Yeah, I mean that's one thing in a lot of sports here where we see the officiating kind of just turn into a show about the officiating. They want to make the game script about them, and that's disappointing in all sports. There, I mean, it's definitely. I think I see it a lot with New York teams because they're always on the national stage and they always have these big name referees. And if you're a big name referee, umpire, official, whatever you want to call them, I mean, you have to have it for a reason, either because you're really good, but unfortunately, most of the time, it's because they make the game about them.
And he also did this thing before the game. I didn't really, once again, trying to make it all about himself. So he refereed. The Rangers were on their local network last night. They're on MSG. But last year, first game of the season, it was Pittsburgh versus Chicago. And Macaulay was reffing. And he started off, he goes to center ice, and before the game starts, it was Bedard versus Crosby in the faceoff, and he goes, Connor, welcome to the show. Sid, welcome back to another year. Like, it just, he was trying to make it about himself.
Yeah.
He wanted that, like, that one-liner that everybody remembers, and clearly I remember it. Like, everybody remembers it. And Saturday night, Sam Rosen's last year, first thing he does, points right up to Sam Rosen and waves at him before he drops the puck. Like, what are you doing?
Right. I mean, definitely disappointing there when you see officials just want to make the game about themselves. Running a little short on time here, so I want to move on to the other team that plays in Madison Square Garden just to make sure we can get to everything. So the Knicks, I mean, they've had their first 2 or 3 preseason.
They've had a couple, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, obviously we saw. I think a huge positive is seeing a center like Karl-Anthony Towns be able to shoot the three. I mean, I haven't seen a Knicks center.
I haven't seen any center do that for a while. Karl-Anthony Towns is probably the best shooting center I've seen in a long time, maybe even ever, like that I've seen at least. But he looks good. That's exactly what the Knicks needed.
Right. They needed that other guy that could shoot. I mean, when you have only 4 players on the court that can shoot, that's already 20% of the players gone that can shoot on the court. And
Robinson's out till January too, so we're going to need him.
Yeah, we're going to need him, and we're going to need him to play a position he might not be comfortable with at center fully yet. I mean, he's a natural power forward. I'm not quite sure about what the transition's like there. What do you think on that?
So when he was in Minnesota, I feel like, so Rudy Gobert got hurt a lot. So I feel like Towns would fill in there, but also they had Naz Reid who would fill in at center. But I wouldn't say he's used to it, but I think it's not going to be hard for him to slip right into that position, at least until January. And then when we have Robinson back, Josh Hart can move to the bench.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely something you want to see from Karl-Anthony Towns there. Having that ability to switch into multiple positions, because when you can only play one position in any sport, I mean, you're not as valuable. I talked about that when I talked about Shohei Ohtani in baseball. I mean, just being able to DH, it automatically diminishes your value a little bit there. And to have a guy like Karl-Anthony Towns on the Knicks be able to play multiple positions, definitely a good thing there. There was a little bit of an altercation last night between Dante DiVincenzo and the New York Knicks.
So it seemed like he was joking around with the Knicks bench, saying, "Oh, this is what happens when they let you run a team and stuff," to Thibodeau. And he was kind of joking around. And Rick Brunson kind of seemed like he took it seriously. And after the game, he kind of got into an argument with Brunson, and they had to be separated. I believe Jalen Brunson pulled his father back, and I want to say it was someone like Josh Hart held back DiVincenzo.
Yeah, I think it was Josh Hart there, but it's disappointing for me to see that because Dante DiVincenzo was such a big part on what the Knicks did last year. I mean, we saw him show up in the postseason, and when you see any player leave your team, it's tough. And then when they come back and there's hard feelings there, or what Dante DiVincenzo claims to be joking, it's not something you want to see there. It's very upsetting to me. I don't think Randall was even very happy coming back. I think the Knicks fans still feel like those players were a huge part of what we got done in the last few years. And for them to not feel that in return is definitely disappointing to me.
Yeah. I do want to say I would say on the brighter side, against the Wizards the other day, the Knicks had forced 30 turnovers.
Yeah, I
Their
mean,
most since I think 1989.
that would have been the most since 1989 if it wasn't a regular season game there. And yeah, you say it's preseason, but to show that effort there in something as simple as a preseason game is such a huge positive when you look at the Knicks team. I mean, they definitely want to win. They have
Absolutely.
that energy there.
And one thing with preseason basketball that's a lot different than all the other sports is that the starters play most of the game. So even saying, "Oh, it was only preseason," the starters were in. So clearly they can force 30 turnovers. And there was one play during that game that was the Villanova. It was Jalen Brunson slapped the ball away. Josh Hart got it, threw it down the court to Bridges. Bridges dunked it. It was amazing.
Right. When you see that team chemistry there, it just puts them on a level above all the other teams, because when you're comfortable, I stress this topic of being comfortable with the players you have on your team. It just makes it so much easier when you're in these stressful situations, when you're in these competitive games, to be able to have that reliability on the players you have on the court, on the field, whatever it may be, and be able to pass it to them and rely on them. It's definitely just just a factor that's so important when you talk about sports.
And I think going back to the Villanova thing, I don't know how Dante would have fit in there, because knowing how Thibodeau likes to coach, Dante wouldn't have gotten the minutes he would have wanted, and he would have been unhappy anyway.
Right. And I mean, a lot of people brought that up. Dante DiVincenzo claims he wasn't uncomfortable being on the bench, but the way he acted when he came back, I mean, he can say it's joking all he wants, but to me, I think there was a little bit of raw emotion there where he did feel a little disrespected by being placed on the bench there. And we might have seen that play out and destroy the team chemistry later on in the season if we did keep DiVincenzo.
I think it's better that they did this now, and you got an amazing center out of it.
Yeah, I mean, definitely huge there. All right, we're going to move on to the last topic of the show, which is our championship series preview. I'm going to start off with the American League Championship. Obviously, we've talked about a little bit of stuff here, but the Guardians team to me is a little bit weird because their team OPS is below league average. I mean, their pitching's great, but I don't think it makes up for that lack of hitting there. They don't have much outside of Jose Ramirez or Josh Naylor. What do you think about that?
So I think we were talking about this yesterday, how similar this team looks to the Royals, because their pitching is very good. The Guardians have had these random guys come out and play amazing. Same as the Royals had Seth Lugo come out of nowhere and be amazing this year. And the Guardians in this Tiger series had Matthew Boyd shut the Tigers down twice. And Jose Ramirez comparable, I would say, to Bobby Witt. And I feel like there's a lot of comparisons you can make between these two teams, and I hope that bodes well for the Yankees.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of just like a team that's like a copy and paste, but like a little bit better. Like they're kind of like just like the level slightly above the Royals, I would say. I mean, they obviously won the division that the Royals were in, so they did play better during the regular season. One thing I'll say about the Guardians, and I'll give them credit for, is I think that they beat a lot of teams that were better than them during the regular season. The Royals, we saw feed off of the White Sox during the season.
As did the Tigers.
Yeah.
But going into, I would say, tonight's pitching matchup with Alex Cobb, he pitched one game in the DS, and he went 3 innings, gave up 2 runs. I don't know if they're going to have him on the short leash like that again tonight, but hopefully the Yankees can get to him early.
Yeah, I feel like Alex Cobb's been around forever, and he's never pitched to his potential. I remember when he came up with the Rays system, and everyone was talking about him being the next ace, and then we saw him bounce around all these teams, and now he's landed up with the Guardians. I'm not really scared of the pitching matchup at all, but then again, the Yankees find ways a lot of the time to not play well against poor pitching matchups.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I also want to point out that the person there's one pitcher that's given up 4 earned runs this postseason for the Guardians, which is the most they've given up, and it's Class A.
Yeah, I mean,
5 innings.
everyone talks about Clase being this shutdown closer, like he's so scary when he comes in. I mean, he comes out to Wild Thing, which I find pretty cool.
Yeah, it's cool.
But if he's not like this scary closer, makes him out to be like this. Yeah, he throws a 100-mile-an-hour cutter, but I'm pretty sure the Yankees got to him in 2022 as well.
The Yankees have gotten to him before.
Yeah, I mean, he's kind of a one-trick pony. He throws the hard cutter and he works the slider off of that, but it's kind of just a softer version of the cutter. It's not anything special to me.
I think one guy the Yankees do have to watch out for is Cade Smith coming out of the bullpen. He pitched in all 5 games, gave up 1 run. He had 12 strikeouts in 6 innings.
Yeah, I mean, the bullpen for the Guardians in general is pretty good. I'm pretty worried about what the Yankees can do off of it. But then again, I think bullpens are being stretched out a little bit. I think the Yankees are going to benefit on the fact that they've played less games than everyone else, it seems like, and they've been able to rest their pitchers a lot more.
Mhm.
That's a huge factor there. I mean, they rest these players during the season so that they can play during the postseason every day.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't know. I think the Yankees bullpen's still gonna be lights out.
Yeah, I don't see a world. They have so many options there that we haven't even seen come out yet. Like Ian Hamilton only pitched like 1 game.
I forgot about him.
Yeah, like he's lights out. Scott Efros is there. I mean, we haven't seen much from him this season, but he has the ability to be good. I wouldn't be shocked if we see Heel out of the bullpen in any game.
I think we're gonna see Stroman.
Yeah,
bullpen.
Stroman worries me a little bit because I compare it to the fact that Frankie Montas in 2022 was coming out of the bullpen and he didn't pitch very well at all.
No, but I know it's Aaron Boone, but hopefully he learned from that. And if he sees Stroman starting to struggle, he's not going to put him in.
Yeah, like it's just a whole different thing to be in the bullpen, and you kind of have to get warmed up on the fly. Like the starters have like hours to get prepared. Like you'll see them out like 3 hours before the game, and then again like 30 minutes before the game. Like they're preparing for like, that whole day.
Yeah, I don't think a lot of runs are going to be scored in this series, if I'm being quite honest.
No,
from either team.
I mean, the Yankees bats I really want to see get going because if they do make it to the World Series, they're going to need their bats because both of the teams they could possibly be facing have elite offenses there. And we need to see a lot from Judge tonight. We need to see a lot from Soto. I need to see a home run from Soto. That's what I need to see from Soto.
Yeah. I think Labor needs to stay hot. I have no worries about Stanton.
Yeah.
I think Jazz will stay hot. Jazz has looked really good.
Yeah, Jazz just feeds off the energy. I mean, we saw in Miami, he talked about like the 12 sellouts they had while he was there were the best games of his career.
Yeah.
And
he feeds off of it.
And now that he's in a lineup on a team where they sell out almost every game, we've seen him be able to feed off of that energy a lot.
Yeah, and I think it bodes well for him, and he's going to continue to do really well.
Yeah, obviously going to be an interesting series there. We're going to move on to the other series. Here in the National League, we've touched on it a little bit as we did with the Yankees, but it's Mets versus Dodgers. We saw game 1 last night. The Mets dropped it 9-0. What did you see from the Mets and Dodgers there?
So we saw. I want to say I said it before. I think Kodai Senga. I think the Mets used him too early. I think he might still be hurt.
Yeah, it's definitely something where you're throwing a guy out where he hasn't pitched much during the season, similar to what the Yankees did with Frankie Montas. Like he got hurt like right as the Yankees traded for him, and then they threw him into a postseason game, and he gave up a crucial home run that year.
But on the other hand, the Mets offense was very quiet last night. I don't know how many hits they had, but I don't think it was a lot.
Yeah, it was terrible. Like it was the worst I've seen the Mets offense doing probably since the All-Star break.
They had 3 hits the whole game.
Yep.
Jack Flaherty went 7 innings. The Mets had 2 errors. So just an all-around bad game for the Mets.
Yeah, an all-around bad game, and I think a huge thing there is they're thinking a little bit too analytically. They're thinking they want to get the starter out for the Dodgers out as quickly as possible. They want to jump on the poor starting pitching, but they need to realize they need to take pitches. They were being way too aggressive last night. They struck out a bunch. I mean, the Mets need to do what works for them and play that gut feeling baseball, not the analytical baseball.
Yeah, and they gave up 9 runs, and Kodai Senga only gave up 3. And which means the bullpen didn't pitch very well. I'm looking. David Peterson gave up 2. 2 earned, 3 runs, which means he had an error.
Yeah.
And then Jose Budo also 2 runs, 2 earned, 3 runs.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
a lot of errors.
the Mets bullpen to me was something I touched upon week after week. It seems like where it's the weakest part of their team, and I was waiting for a team to jump on it. I thought it was going to be the Phillies last series, but the Dodgers definitely exposed that bullpen for what it is. And the fact the Mets have had to play in the wild card series and then the division series and then now the championship series, they've played a lot of games back to back to back to back here, and they had to play the doubleheader last week too, or 2 weeks ago.
That's right. Yeah.
And this is a lot of games in a short amount of time. Like the pitching is going to be tired, and when you have a weak bullpen to begin with, it's going to be a bad sight to see.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the Dodgers are going to continue to jump on that opportunity.
Yeah. Talk about the Dodgers a little bit. I mean, Freddie Freeman it seems like he's still hurt, and they're sending him out there to play, and then they pull him after late into the games because they don't want that injury to resurface there. We saw Ohtani get caught stealing last night too. I mean, a lot of things just went a lot differently than we would have thought, but the Dodgers pulled that on top there.
I also want to talk about really quickly, Teoscar Hernandez has looked like their best player so far.
Yeah, I mean, I saw Teoscar Hernandez in the home run derby when I went back in July, and I mean, the guy has some of the best raw power in the league. I saw him play for the Blue Jays for years, and to see him get the respect he finally deserves is a great thing to see.
Absolutely. And Ohtani has struck out. Has 6 hits, but he struck out 10 times. So to me, it seems like Ohtani's either hit or he's going to strike out.
Yeah, to me, I've talked about it a lot. I think Ohtani isn't much more than just a power hitter. I mean, he's just a raw power hitter that he's going to strike out a lot. And I think his average is a lot higher this year than we're going to see.
I 100% agree, especially once he starts pitching again.
Yeah, and he's seeing these better pitchers now, and we're seeing it that he's a strikeout or home run guy, kind of like Giancarlo Stanton.
Yeah.
All right. I think that's all we have time for today. Thank you again, Christian, for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Great.
Going to be a great day in New York sports. Empire State of Sports signing off.